the advisor to Ukraine's defence minister. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Can I get your thoughts, first of all, on this breaking news development, these three men who have been sentenced to death, your reaction to that developing news?
Thank you for inviting me. Of course, this is deeply concerning for us as well, because, these persons who have been sentenced today to death, they have been, according to the Geneva Conventions, they should be recognized as prisoners of war. And like your earlier report said, they should be given treatment according to the Geneva Convention. So if this does not happen, this will constitute, unfortunately, yet another violation of the international laws of war by the aggressor, by the enemy. And of course, we hope that there will be sufficient diplomatic efforts that will make it possible to avoid this scenario.
I mentioned to Joe Inwood, our correspondent, what the UK Prime Minister's spokesman said, that they would work with Ukrainian authorities to try to secure the release of these men. But what influence do Ukrainian authorities have? This is a totally separatist area that is set up. It's set its own court up, and we've seen what has happened.
Of course, we do not have access to those territories, and we do not have any direct influence over the decisions that those authorities of these so-called self-proclaimed republics make, including their courts. But at the same time, it's a very complicated system of relationship between Ukraine, the international organizations such as International Red Cross, the UN representatives. So there are, as we have seen during the process of the evacuation of Ukrainian warriors from the Azovstal steel plant, there are mechanisms there which can be exploited and should be used by all parties involved to ensure that these people are treated accordingly to the international law.
In terms of international law that you reference, what in your view is the status of these fighters that have come and joined the Ukrainian forces?
Well, according to international law, if you look at the definition of what constitutes a combatant, then these people, these persons, they have had all the attributes that make it possible for them to be beneficiaries of the Geneva Convention. So they're combatants, and as such, they should be treated as prisoners of war according to the Geneva Conventions.
Does it make you also extremely concerned in terms of all of those Ukrainian fighters that we saw surrender in Mariupol, and we're still uncertain as to what exactly is going to happen to them, has happened to them?
We are concerned for every Ukrainian fighter, those who are kept prisoners of war at the moment, those who are on the battlefield. So, of course, we are, for Ukrainians, the value number one, the priority value for us is the human life. Unlike our enemy, unlike the aggressor, who seems to spare no human life, neither Ukrainians nor even their own. So from this perspective, we are very concerned, and we will do all we can and all we have to ensure that, these lives are saved, including those who are now prisoners of war.
Let me turn to what is actually happening in terms of the fighting in the east of the country. How close do you think you are to actually losing control of Donetsk?
This is a question that has been asked, and I have personally had to answer it for the last 2 weeks. And every day it seemed like, the battle is almost lost, and yet we're still standing. So what we can say with certainty is that another blitzkrieg, which Russians wanted to have, is not actually happening. The defense of the Severodonetsk continues. Of course, the Russian aggressors, their troops are in town, and it's a situation of a positional street-to-street fighting. Russians are trying to advance. They're trying to help their advance by incessant bombing, shelling, heavy artillery. And of course, the problem number one is that on this battlefield, the Russians at the moment have, when it comes to heavy artillery, they have a 40-to-1 at times advantage. So this is why we keep requesting our international partners to not delay the provision of Ukraine with the heavy artillery, with the MLRS systems, with the HIMARS systems, because we need them badly. We need them to change the course of this war and to stop it and to restore peace.
I'll come back to armaments and weapons in a moment or two, but just in terms of what is happening, because that city is so important, is your hope that your forces would regroup in Lysychansk if Severodonetsk falls, so that it doesn't actually open the door to the whole of the Donbass?
I wouldn't want to speculate on what happens next, but of course we understand that the plans of our enemy are extensive. They go beyond Donbass. They actually go beyond Ukraine. So we are doing everything we can with the means that we have at our disposal at the moment to hold on, to keep our defenses in Severodonetsk, in cities around such as Lysychansk. But of course, this war, the course of this war will be decided, I will repeat, by the pace at which Ukraine receives the military support from our international partners. This can be a decisive factor, and this will determine actually the answer to the question that you're asking me right now.
Well, let me ask you about those weapons, those advanced rocket systems pledged by the US, pledged by the UK. I suppose the difficulty for you is that it amounts to probably only around a dozen systems, whereas we hear from your commanders you need over 100. So how far short do you think you really are?
Well, exactly, just like you said, what we have received so far, we are grateful for it, of course, because only a couple of weeks ago, this seemed also impossible. But now the decision has been made by the US government, by the UK government, to start providing Ukraine with these systems. And they, like I said, they're crucial on the battlefield. And you also rightly pointed out that our Commander-in-Chief, the General Staff of Ukrainian Armed Forces, said that for Ukraine to have the sufficient advantage on the battlefield, for Ukraine to be able to more efficiently protect our land and liberate it, we need, well, to be precise, 96 of these systems, in addition to all the heavy artillery cannons, long-range cannons, combat aircraft, air defense systems, and so on and so forth. So yes, it's a race against time, and just so that you understand, in Ukraine, it's become such an urgent topic that even little children, as young as 10, when you meet them, when I personally meet them, they ask me, so when are the Americans and the Brits will give us the rockets? So they don't understand all the nuances and specifics, of course, but they understand that this is what is needed to restore peace. This is what is needed to save Ukraine as well as Europe.
Well, we have to leave it there, but a very clear message that you end on. Thank you so much for joining us, telling us about the latest fighting on the ground and reacting to that breaking news that we've been hearing about in the last hour.